All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Wikid Creator interview with the Wrath Creative Team. My name is Michael, and as always, I'm joined by co-founder Matt. And we're talking today with
How's it going?
with Scott and Drew. Would you prefer Drew or Drewzelle?
So my name is actually Drew. I just go
Okay.
by Drewzelle because my name is incredibly common, and if you Google my name, you'll come up with a bunch of other people.
Oh, really? That's
So
fair.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're joined by Scott and Drew. Welcome, guys.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Scott is the writer on the series, and Drew does the art.
Yep.
It's a new series that's out on Kickstarter right now, and we'll be talking a little bit about their campaign today. And so, thanks again for joining us, guys. How are you? How are you all doing today?
Doing
Pretty
good?
good.
Yeah, keeping busy with your campaign.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And had the warm up talk this morning, so we're
Right.
good
Yeah,
to
you
go.
were on the podcast with us earlier. In fact, just to get off on a real quick tangent, I'm actually thinking about doing an artist episode of the podcast. So it'd be cool to have you on for an episode, Drew.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to see if I can fit that into my schedule.
Definitely. So why don't we start with telling everybody just a little bit about yourselves?
All right. You want to go first, Scott?
Sure. This is my first comic. Kind of got the idea a couple years ago. Signed up with Wikid back in December. Started finishing up the script. Found Drew. What was that? Probably January, February.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah. We agreed to work on the project together, and we've started campaigning and launched the Kickstarter Friday. A little bit more about myself. I've got a 4-year-old and 2 dogs. Usually it's pretty chaotic around the house, but right now everyone's sleeping, so we should be good.
Right. All things as long as they hold true, right?
As long as the squirrel doesn't run across the fence, we're
Yeah,
good.
there you go. Well, that's really cool. And Drew, what about you? What's a little bit about yourself that you can tell us?
So I do some freelance art in my spare time. I work a full-time job, not in the creative field, but hoping to change that soon. But but yeah, so I don't want to say recent anymore. It's been about a year, but a fairly recent college grad. I got a degree in game art and animation, so I have some experience with like illustration, character design, all that. And when Scott reached out to me, I was a little worried because I hadn't done a comic before, but then I was like, comics are close enough to storyboarding, and I know how to do that, so why not give it a shot?
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And how have you been liking it so far?
It's been a bit challenging to adjust some things, but I enjoy the challenge and I enjoy, like sitting down with the pages and kind of figuring how they're going to be laid out and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. And Scott, I know this is your first project that you've worked on. So what kind of got you wanting to create a comic in the first place?
It was, I think, the original idea that I had. Also, I was listening to Dan Harmon, and also at that same time, this is about a year ago, I want to say, Kevin Smith did this great interview of Dan Harmon where he talks about how he and Rob Schraub went from making Scud the Disposable Assassin and ended up moving out to Hollywood, and they got into scripts, and he was just
Wow.
talking about, like, just if you've got an idea, just write it. Just, it's not that hard. Just write it. All we did was go to the library, found a book on how to write scripts, and we were to go. So I had the idea, and I just Googled how to write comics, found a bunch of, like guides on scripting and outlining, and started there.
That's really cool. Yeah. And for those who aren't familiar with Wrath, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Wrath is about?
So Wrath is the story of 2 friends, Doug and Nicole, that are just kind of taking their first steps into adulthood. And as Doug is kind of dealing with his traumatic past. He has an unfortunate incident on his way home from Nicole's house, and those things combined kind of awaken his power, which is to bring all of that anger, regret, and anger, regret, and remorse, and kind of bring that out into a physical form. So the first time this happens, it's completely out of his control. He goes to sleep, and the creature kind of emerges and goes off to seek some vengeance on the people that just recently hurt him.
Wow. And I'm assuming it does so of its own volition.
Yeah, it's kind of like a subconscious. The creature is you see a little picture of it here as I'm talking. It takes on like a more primal animalistic form, and tracks down these guys. And then Doug wakes up the next morning, and he's got some physical evidence and some dreamlike memories of what happened. And as his day goes, he kind of starts piecing things together.
Really. And what can you what does he do with this information? Is that something you could tell us, or is that a little bit of a spoiler? How will he confront this knowledge?
So the first issue is going to end with him kind of it all kind of sinks in, and so he starts confiding in his best friend Nicole because he doesn't really know what else to do.
Oh, okay.
So the second issue is what is kind of, well, I don't believe you, and they kind of try and figure out how to do it themselves. If it, like, if you can do this, let's see you do it, kind of thing. And then where do we go from here is what it comes down to. Like, what are the repercussions? How do we stop this from just happening all the time? Because he doesn't want to be responsible for hurting or killing anyone, every time he goes to sleep.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it seems like the friendship between those two characters is like a really big part of your guys' story.
It's the first issue is, I'd have to say, pretty dark because we
really.
Yeah, we go into a lot of like Doug's past and where this trauma originates from. And I know Drew's got some plans on how she wants to draw that out that are pretty exciting, but we're gonna have to wait to see on that.
Involving specifically the trauma.
Like the flashbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that a little bit without making too many spoilers. So the comic itself is black and white with some grayscale shading to give it some depth. But my plan for the flashbacks was to make it very stark, just black and white, no, just no shades of gray, very, almost like jarring compared to the rest of it. I wanted to play with really like bold silhouettes and almost kind of kind of like an almost noir, kind of like how things are almost cast in shadow, which because it really was such a dark time in Doug's life. And then contrast that with the rest of the comic, comparatively being a lot more life, like having life to it, and a little bit more detail and that sort of stuff, whereas the flashbacks are very stark and almost empty and just these harsh memories.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah.
And I tried to convey that too when I wrote it. I wanted it to be dramatic and intense, but without showing too much detail.
Show but not rather tell, but what is the adage?
Show not tell.
But I guess in this case it'd be the opposite, really. It'd be kind of alluding to rather than showing outright. Is that right? Or
I kind of like to think of it as like the scene from Reservoir Dogs where he douses the officer in gasoline, and then you see him take the razor, but then it like pans down the hallway.
You don't need the next scene because you know what's coming next. It's already bad enough. It's kind of like setting it up almost.
Yes, yeah, like you get the like, this is what's happening, and then you're gonna get a little bit of like after, but not the actual like physical abuse.
which I think that's actually a pretty effective way to do that. And I like the idea of having those flashbacks kind of be more stark and in line with that idea of it being these traumatic events for him in his life. I think that was a really clever way to take that.
For sure.
Yeah, Drew's great in taking what I have, which is good, and then making
That's always the best part about working with artists is you have an idea in your head, and then once you see the final result, it's always better than what you could have ever imagined. And I think that's what's so cool about collaboration works like these.
well, like take for
go on.
example, like my little rage puppy here is you know, I was torn because I wanted like his skin pattern to be like something unique and cool, and Matt was helping me with the concept, and we were playing around with a bunch of different ideas, and then Drew got a hold of it and got what you see in front of you now, and I loved it. Like I just think that the kind of like scarring pattern on him just fits the theme so well.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job on the rage puppy, as Scott likes to call it.
I would have to definitely agree with that.
Yeah. So
Actually, I can just kind of elaborate on that the rage puppy. I actually I wanted to part of one of the things me and Scott were like, he's like, we should make, you know, designs for the characters and the main creature, you know, just so people can have something to kind of get interested on. And I have to say, when I sat down to like draw the creature, it was almost like an immediate, like I knew exactly how I wanted to do it. I just had to actually just put it on there on the paper or the screen. Like I had the pose, the, you know, the expression and the way the kind of the coat looks, like that was just like I had this great idea just from the way, you know, Scott described it to me. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's just really cool to hear that, and that I think it came out perfect. You know, so I'm excited to see where it goes next with the comic itself. So speaking of the kind of the characters, what can you tell us a little bit about some of the characters in the story?
Sure. The main characters are Doug and Nicole. We've already established them. In the first chapter, you're gonna see Doug's parents. Part of the thing is I wanted to establish with Doug in particular that while he had this traumatic past, his mom was smart enough to remove him from that situation and put her life back together. So she's remarried. She's gone back to school. She's gotten a degree. She actually works as a local prosecutor in a DA's office. You know, like that's kind of connected to my work. But, and then she's actually married to a police officer. And Doug has always basically seen his stepfather as his dad. So he's had that, what we were talking about earlier, that strong sense of, you know, like moral right and wrong. And so he's got that good background that's kind of pushed him onto a steady path, but that still that memory and that trauma has stuck with him, and it's never really had a reason to come out until now.
Sorry.
Go on.
Oh no, you go first. I just wanted to say something, but in the chat, but I'll hold off for just a second.
All right. I was just gonna say, and when Scott and I were discussing, you know, Doug's parents, what they were gonna look like, you know, one of the things we were talking about is that we wanted Doug to resemble his biological father more than his actual mom. So, you know, even though he has this loving family, he visually, just the way he looks is this sort of reminder of this past that he really wants to forget.
Wow. That's really quite good. It's almost like he, even as much as he wants to escape it, it's on his face and he can't escape it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
that was Scott's idea, and I loved it, and I'm
Nice.
very excited to.
I'm glad you
show
brought
you
that up
more
because I kind of forgot about that.
Oh man. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, like sometimes you come up with a great idea and then you forget about it, I guess.
Well, it just kind of becomes like natural and such an ingrained part of the story.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah, like it's almost like it's become second nature in a way, I guess, because you become so familiar with these characters and their stories. So we have your comics out on Kickstarter right now. and it's just starting its or it's about, I guess, a little over halfway through the second day. How's that going for you guys, and what can you tell us about the campaign?
I'm sorry, I was reading chat.
No worries. Yeah, actually, that real quick. I just want to say, speaking of the chat, real quick. Brett says for Drew, what drew you? Pun not intended to wrath.
Yeah, I've not heard that one before. It's pretty fun though. No, it's all good. So the thing that I thought was interesting about Wrath, from when I first started talking with Scott, is this idea of this, like, you know, kid that he's like, I think he's supposed to be around 19, like just starting college, and like this, like having something so bad happen to you at such a young age and like trying to get out of that, and the way you could tell, like a positive story, I guess, on around such a like a negative basis. I'm always a sucker for those types of stories where it's like, as fun as, being kind of doom and gloom and edgy can be, it's like I always enjoy a story that, where someone can rise above and can overcome that. So that was really inspiring to me, and I really like that aspect of the story.
That's really cool. Yeah, I totally 100% agree with you. It's almost would you guys consider, like, do you guys think of Doug as a bit of an underdog in a way?
Oh, definitely. He's just like average Joe kind of kid, and that's kind of why we chose the artwork that we did, and why I liked Drew's art in particular, is that I wanted my characters to just seem just absolutely normal. I want the world to look normal, and I want the creature to be something like bizarre and fantastical in that world.
Really? Oh, nice. That's cool. I love that element of combining, like, kind of like you said, Drew, kind of like combining what's that, that whole dark story, but with the elements of hope, and you combine that with the whole fantasy and then the real life issues. I really think you've got a story that has a lot of heart here. I think that's important in when you're creating something, to have something that's you're truly trying to bring across some sort of theme or ideas that you have.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. Real quick, for Scott, do you think your story, did you build your story based off of some of the themes you wanted to come across inside of it, or did the themes kind of build themselves up as you were building the story?
Well, if you wanted to go back to like the original idea, it's actually based off of my sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea?
Yes. Let me explain.
Yeah, it's an explanation there, I think.
So I'd just been diagnosed, and I was taking a walk, and I was thinking about how, like, I didn't know this thing was happening to me, and it was like my body was slowly like torturing and killing itself while I was sleeping.
Jesus.
And then I thought, like, what if my emotions did that?
Huh.
And so that was the original idea, and then I started refining it into, like, what would drive that, like, because, like myself, I don't really have anything in my personal life that's quite as bad as this, but where I work, I'm adjacent to it like every day, and I see that these things just most often just destroy people's lives, and it's really hard for them to build it back up. And so that's kind of where I was getting that theme from, like, and part of the thing that I like to see is when people kind of take that energy and then direct it towards some good. But also, there is going to be some conflict later on, where we get to see what happens to people that might have the same power but choose a different path.
You're kind of two sides of the same coin in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a very interesting concept. I mean, it is done a lot, but with this, it takes that emotional grip to like an extreme in a sense.
Yeah, and one of the things that you're going to see with Doug, and especially like going into issue 2, and I mentioned this to you guys when I was outlining it, is that it's the second issue is going to be a lot lighter. You're going to see all the good stuff that's in Doug's life, like his friend, and how they joke around and have fun together. but at the same time, you can still see that even with that, there's something that drags at him.
Really? And that's kind of holding him back, maybe?
And people who have these things tend to, like at points they'll be fine, but at other points they're not. Like if you see something that reminds you of this, or just with Doug, he looks at himself in the mirror, he's reminded of where he came from, who he was a part of, and does that mean that he has to follow that same path, or does he get to choose what he wants to do?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I think another thing too is that kind of going back to like what drew me to Wrath, something else that I really appreciated was a story about trauma, a story about abuse, and these dark themes, but treating it very respectfully. I really appreciated that as like, Doug's going through this, but it's not about, the story isn't just about the abuse, it's not focusing on, all these horrible things that happened to Doug. It's also focusing on like the good things that happened to Doug and like the support that he has. And I think that's something that I know people who go through these things or have been through these things, I bet it would be something that if they read this story, it's like, it's not all bad. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is a way you can get out. And like I said, I appreciated that it wasn't just, this
And
kind of
darkness, maybe.
Yeah.
No, that's really a really cool point you bring up. I think that's why so many people will connect with your story, and you got your artwork and your story both. It really is like, I think it's something that a lot of people have gone through in their past.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I see it every day. And a lot of the people I work with that I've shared this idea with are very much on board. Like especially like some of them I've shown the Kickstarter to, and they've read that and they're like, you this really resonates with me. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Nice. Well, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to bring up the Kickstarter onto the screen share real quick, so we can take a look at your guys' campaign real quick.
For sure.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, why don't you guys go ahead and tell us some of the special perks that people will be able to get?
Boom. Yeah, what are some of the tiers that you guys have available?
So the basic one is the digital copy, of course, which anyone can get. We can send that anywhere. Probably the best one for international backers. And just a very simple, easy, affordable way for you to support us. Next one goes to, we're actually going to have two different covers for Wrath. So this would be the standard cover, which is going to feature, there's a part where Doug kind of rides into the woods, and we're going to have him kind of like hesitating with kind of some play with the shadow that he's casting from a streetlight for that cover. And then the next one is going to be a variant cover, which since I'm in close proximity to Michael here, he gets all the copies, so I'll be able to sign those for you guys. And this is a special variant cover that's only going to be available to people who support us through crowdfunding. Because this is going to be a big project, so we might do future crowdfundings for further chapters.
And what kind of a variant cover do you guys have in mind for that one?
You want to talk about that one, Drew?
Sure. So when Scott and I were kind of brainstorming covers, the idea that he had that I liked was this image of a younger Doug, perhaps like in the worst of what he's going through, and having a shadow behind him that resembles the creature, as almost like this is where its origin is, and how this is where it all started, sort of thing. So since this first issue is a very origin story, filling you in on like not only what caused this to happen, but also the very first time it happens to Doug, having that variant cover kind of express this, like, where it all started, I thought was a really cool idea. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's great. It's I think that's a fun way to allude to that origin story.
Yeah, the nice thing too is I pitched her my version of the cover, then she pitched her version of the cover, and her version is going to be the standard one, but you kind of have the two different things that trigger this emergence. You have the past and then the future event kind of foreshadowed there in both covers.
Oh wow! So is there an option to get both? Oh, in fact, I just think
there you go. Yeah, that's the very next one.
Yeah, look at that. One of each. Nice. That's awesome. So if you were to get one of each, you'd be able to see that those two, as you said, the references both past and future.
Yeah, but these sort of two pivotal points for Doug, like the original trauma and then the sort of trigger for what sets it off. It like sets off the ability.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's awesome. That's kind of going along with what you were talking about earlier, I think, about him kind of discovering in the light of day, more and more about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but this is more alluding to the event that we're not spoiling. That is going to add current trauma to his past trauma.
Okay, so it's a little bit different than that.
Yes, and it's kind of the breaking point for the power emerging.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And so that's what you get here with the $30 pledge. You get one digital copy of Wrath and a standard issue and a signed variant cover, or a variant issue of Wrath.
Yep.
And the book, have we talked about the page count yet on this one?
No, we haven't. I originally wrote it to be like 35, 40. And then Drew has had fun planning this out, so it's come up to about 45 now.
Nice.
There are some really cool ideas, and I didn't want to, shorten them or not give things this, so far to say, the screen time that they need. It's page time, I guess, but
yeah, no, I totally get that. Like some things just are essential, and it's hard to cut things a lot of times. But that's a big page count that you guys are working with. So I mean, that's a lot of material, a lot of story people are going to be getting with this book when they back it.
For sure.
And I think what kind of intimidated Drew is I came up to her and said, "Hey, I've got this idea for a 6-chapter graphic novel. It's going to be like 250 pages and like 1,100 panels. Do you want
ambitious, man? That's what I like about you, though. That's what we always I always saw in you when we first started talking.
Yeah, and I was definitely intimidated just because, like I said, I had never done a comic before. This actually sort of came out of the blue. I just happened to, check my messages one day, and I just see this message, and I'm like, I didn't recognize the username, so I was like, who is this? And then I read over it, and I'm like, my first reaction is like, wow, this could be really cool. And then my second reaction was like, oh my God, this is a lot, like, oh, okay, is this something I can even do? I've never done this before. And
sorry.
It was like I said, I was a little hesitant at first, not because I didn't think the story was interesting, but just because I was genuinely like, is this something I can even do? And the fact that I was, passionate about the project, and I thought it was a really good idea, that I didn't want to screw it up. No, that's kind of like not giving myself a lot of credit, but I was worried about that. But
really? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, how has it been coming along now that you actually got into the thick of it and started working on it?
I'm feeling better about it. Like I said, it's a learning process for me. I haven't done comics before, so but I read a lot of comics. So
really?
yes, I do.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
So it's a lot of I actually sat down after deciding to work on this and reread some of my favorite comics, and not going for the content, but seeing how were the panels set up, how detailed were the backgrounds. And I actually did this after I finished the very first page that you can see there on the Kickstarter. And my first thing was like, man, these pages are taking a little bit longer than I thought. And then I actually went back and read some comics. I'm like, man, the backgrounds are usually not as detailed as I put, but I come from this illustration background where it's like,
wow,
you put all these little details in the background, and I'm like, maybe I should, learn to have a balance between like this impulse of like, oh, I'm gonna put all these little things in the background to help tell the story, but then also like, oh, that's gonna add a whole lot of time to making each page, and I want to make sure I can get more pages done a week and all that. So
yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, and that's actually something that I really liked about your art too. Is it is very detailed, and I loved like even just looking at this page here, we see like the street and the lamp and the mailbox, and it's all looks really great. And I think the detail on it actually is something that really makes the art really pop and stand out.
I did ask her to put a little character foreshadowing for Nicole in her panel.
Huh? Really?
Yeah, it's really subtle, but
let's see. We have a book, we have a laptop, a vase. Those are the three prominent things that I see in the panel. I'm not sure you're trying to keep it close, so you won't spoil it here, but just speculating. That's all.
Okay.
I know you don't want to spoil it, probably, right?
Well, I don't know. I'm okay
Can
with
you?
it.
You are? Yeah, go for it, dude. Please.
So, because it goes into a little bit of her background, and I don't mind sharing with the people that were kind enough to come and listen to us. But I asked her on that poster, if you look at it, there's kind of like a little winged creature.
Oh wow.
It's kind of hard to see there.
Yeah.
It is a little small on the screen, but
I see that. I see that.
Yeah, and so that was kind of like she's kind of his moral compass in a way.
His kind of guardian angel sort of thing. So having this sort of wing motif on the poster. And I didn't want to make it too detailed because I didn't want to make it too like overt. Like, hey, look at this poster of a winged creature. But
no, I think that turns out great actually. And I like that idea of her being.
It's very ambiguous, really, the way it's designed, because looking at it, it can be a number of things, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting about that is something that when me and Matt work on a common project together, and Matt's always he's the artist on it, and he always likes to put in little things in the background that are kind of subtle, and you kind of have to get rewarded for kind of noticing those things. So I think those kind of things you guys add in, it's really great.
Yeah, and I don't mind spoiling that one for people here because I think that enough people are gonna get fresh eyes on this that they'll have to figure it out.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I'm sure there'll be more stuff like that going forward as well.
Maybe if I come up with some good ideas like that, we'll see.
Who knows? Maybe Drew will throw some in just to throw you off or something.
I would not be surprised.
Now, it looks like we have a international tier. Is that correct?
Yeah. We wanted to. I know that with Cody's Jack Irons, there were some international backers, and while the shipping is pretty brutal, I at least wanted to give them that option to get the hard copies, and we did make it so that they would be getting the standard and variant cover to try and get them the most for their shipping cost.
Yeah, I think that's a great option to have for those who are interested, because a lot of times, these guys out in the international, they want to back it, and they're willing to pay for the international shipping because it's what they're always been used to their whole lives. So I think it's a great way to reach out to your fans who are out there, and I think that was a good move.
Yeah, and I have a few friends, art friends online that, live various places in the world. So when I told them about this and I told them that there was international, they're like, yay, it's sometimes Kickstarters don't have international shipping options, and, they just have to resign themselves to just getting the PDF or something like that when really they want a physical copy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's cool to hear that you already even know some people who are looking forward to grabbing that with the international one. Because I do totally agree with you. Like there's just something about feeling that comic in your hands and being able to read it in physical print. It's just for me at least, and I know a lot of people. It's uncomparable to the digital. So yeah, I'm super excited. And now, Drew, have you had the chance to check out any of the other Wikid books like Jack Irons or anything in print?
I have looked at them on the website, and I've checked out the Twitters and stuff like that. I haven't been able to purchase anything super recently.
Maybe
Just
yeah, no worries. Maybe if Scott can't show you at some point, maybe we can send you out a comic care package. And
oh, that would be awesome.
oh,
I always am down to read more comics.
nice.
I'm actually quite sad that we had a little local comic shop not too far from where I live, and I went to I hadn't been there in a while, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go," and then they weren't there anymore. They had closed down, so I was really bummed about that. So I would love to get some new comics in my hands.
Oh, that's awful to hear about the shop, but yeah, we'll definitely hook you up.
I think they might have moved somewhere else.
Oh, really? Okay,
like
well,
it wasn't like they like shut down. It's just like
well,
that. I think they might have moved. It was a tiny little place.
Really?
They might have moved somewhere a little bigger.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, seriously.
Fingers crossed. We can hope that.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely get you some of the Wikid comics. That'd be awesome. But I was just gonna say we we work with a really cool printer, and so I'm really excited to see what he does with such a large size book. I think it'll turn out really cool. So I'm very excited about it. He always does great quality, and I've heard nothing but good things from people who've been able to pick up some of these books. So
I did talk about that in the risks and challenges.
Oh, really? Nice.
A little bit.
Is that a risk or a challenge?
Well, one of the things that like challenges when it comes to fulfillment is getting the books out and making sure they're good quality. So I talked about I have you guys as my publisher, and you guys have already started establishing yourself for the quality and getting the books out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're kind of reassuring backers because we have experience doing these campaigns. So
right, because a lot of these people, like they do everything themselves. So it's some reassurance to our backers that we do have an operation in place to process this and get it out to them.
that's excellent. Yeah, I think we've learned a lot over here at Wikid doing these things, and we've got a really good, efficient, fast way to get these out and make them sure they're getting there in 100% quality.
Oh, yeah. Compared to even just the first copies of the first 2 chapters of Project R, like the difference is so comparable. It's so much better than what we had through Amazon's Create Space. And I mean, that quality was really good. It's still really good, but like the comic quality that we're getting now is just uncomparable for it. It's like, oh, geez, this is not how it's supposed to feel.
Yeah, that's what you get when you work with independent guys, and they can really spend the time to make your product handcrafted. Each of these books, it's not like we don't work with one of those mass producers guys who has a big old printer spitting out 1,000 of these finished books a second or whatever. But instead, he has to go through each book by hand pretty much and put it together, and it's a process of passion and love, I think. So it's definitely something that to look forward to, with not just the quality of the art and the writing, but the actual books, physical books themselves will look really good.
And the other thing I talk about in the risks and challenges is just how big and ambitious this project is, and how while we are using Kickstarter, I'm reassuring our backers that everything's going towards production. So pretty much after we pay off Kickstarter and we get all the fulfillment stuff, everything's going to Drew so she can just get to work on drawing these wonderful pages and getting this put together.
That's excellent.
Better than that.
And
go on,
if we overshoot the goal, all of that's going to go into the next chapter, and if we somehow get more, it'll go into the third chapter, and then once we start selling copies through Wikid, all of those profits that I would be getting go into production to the next chapter. So the idea is that we appreciate our backers, and we want to try and lean on them less and less as we get this story arc out there.
Yeah, for sure. That's like this Kickstarter is 100% just, I don't know if Scott mentioned it, but like both him and I work full-time jobs. So this is like, me being able to take off a couple days of work so I can just sit down and draw all day and, really dedicate time to the project. So, all of the money that we're raising is going right back into the project and, so we can get it to its full 6 issues like we really wanted to.
And that was the second half of the risk and challenge too, is the production is going to be a little bit slower. So for chapter 1, if we get fully funded, it's going to come out probably late January, February of next year.
Nice. Yeah, it's a big chunky book, so it's going to take some time to produce. It sounds like.
For sure.
Now, do you guys? I don't think we've talked about this. Are you guys working with the letterer, or are you guys doing the lettering yourselves?
So that might be something that we outsource depending on funding, but for right now, we've kind of worked out a dual process where I do like the rough lettering, and then Drew works her magic and cleans it all up and makes it look professional.
Nice. You gotta love that magic right there, man. Saves you every time.
the artists in Photoshop magic.
Right.
To me, it's magic because I don't know how she does it.
Well, hey, exactly. That's how I feel too.
Hey, isn't that the explanation of it? Something science, unless it's unexplainable, then it's just magic.
Hopefully, I'm gonna get better so that her touch-up work gets less and less, and then I can do a lot more of it, so she can focus on the drawing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because once the campaign is like and you guys get to your goal and it all finishes up, it's gonna get to the grindstone and kind of get into the meat of things.
Yep.
That's when the real work begins. As Cody I'm sure Cody can tell you guys.
Yeah, he's been absent lately because he's been working on 2.
Oh, poor guy.
That is crazy for him.
Right? Yeah. But
real quick, Drew, since this is your first comic project, would you be able to tell us any other projects as far as like your degree has gone, as far as animation and everything else? Have you worked on any other projects?
So yeah, during my senior year, my school was really cool, and basically, instead of having to do like a senior thesis individually, my school would let us divide ourselves into teams. So you could either join the large team, which is probably like 30 or 40 people, or what I chose was the indie team, which my team was about 5-6 people. So across all the specializations, I was an art major, but we had programmers, we had designers, we had writers, all that sort of fun stuff. And so we all got together, we made our teams, and we all made a game our senior year. So I was the primary artist. I got some help from a friend of mine who wasn't in college with me, but they were a really good friend of mine, and I got the teacher's permission. They helped me a lot with like coloring and stuff, so I do a bunch of line work or do mock-ups, and then they would help finalize it while I would continue to work in like my classes and stuff like that. So we actually made a game called A Tale of Arms and Ale. It's on itch.io. If you just Google A Tale of Arms and Ale, it should be the first thing that pops up.
I'm totally gonna put that into the YouTube. Tales of what is it again? Sorry.
A Tale of Arms and Ale. It's a fantasy inverse RPG. So the idea that we had is, whenever you're playing like a fantasy RPG, the kind of stereotype is, you go to the inn, you go to the bar, you go to the tavern, and the tavern keeper, has a quest for you. And then you go out into the world. So we kind of had this idea of, what if you are the tavern keeper and you have the quests and you're dealing with all these adventurers coming into your bar, coming into your tavern. And so we were able to make a demo during our, the 2 semesters of my senior year. So it's the first, I believe, week of your tavern keeping. You've taken over the bar from your parents, and it's your first week, on your own. And just sort of this little glimpse into the world and the people who inhabit it. And so right now, the team that I worked with, we're possibly interested in continuing it, but we all graduated. We all had some stuff that we had to take care of after that, so it's on a bit of a hiatus right now. But I would love to go back to that world. I had a lot of time developing, a lot of fun developing it and all that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it looks really fun. I love the art style and just the idea of being the tavern owner. It's such a fun reversal of roles.
So it's almost like that quest in World of Warcraft where you become the quest giver and you like hand out the quest to the
Is
heroes.
there, is there
Pretty much, yeah.
All right.
Is that the thing in World of Warcraft, huh? I didn't know that.
It came in like one of the later expansions.
Nice.
Yeah, I actually do remember that. It's like you go to this quest and the quest giver's like, we're actually running out of quest givers. Can you be a quest giver for a little bit? And it's pretty fun. So
I think the little exclamation point even appears over your head if I remember right.
I think it does, yeah.
That's weird, man.
Yeah, right.
What are they running out of? Like memory space or something?
No, they're running out of NPCs, man.
There's too many wars in Warcraft, they're running out of people.
That's right. There's only so many of them out there, That's a fun tongue and cheek way to do that genre. I think that's great. I mean, it kind of made me think of another questions. I kind of know a little bit on Scott's side, just a bit, but do either of you have much experience with tabletop games? In terms of playing and all that?
I have played a few. Like I said, I was recently in college, so not a whole lot of time. But I've been part of a few D&Ds. I've done some kind of homebrewed sessions and stuff like that with some friends. It's something I'm very interested in. Just got to have the time to do it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And got to be able to coordinate everybody,
oh gosh, that's even
put
worse.
everyone's schedules together.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. I had a group going for a while back, and yeah, it's just so hard to find time when everyone's free. But that's just cool.
I'm gonna put out my my nerd credentials here. So I played Pathfinder a lot. So they had this organized play system. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Society, right?
Yes, I was back in my heyday. I hit 5-star GM in that system, which means I had over 150 games run, and I think I did the math on that. It was like over 1,000 hours.
Yeah, wow. You definitely got newbie, that's for sure.
Yeah, bro,
my dude would have gotten creamed by your character.
That's why I said I have credentials.
For real, dude. Yeah, you're not kidding.
I actually do have a little fun anecdote. It's nothing I've personally done, but how many of y'all played D&D 3.5?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the covers of the books? How they were like almost like sculpted, kind of realistic?
Mm-hmm.
So, fun fact, my godfather is the artist who did all the covers for the 3.5 books. So, yeah, I actually remember being, a kid and going into his like library studio and seeing like the physical versions of them. They're probably about 5 or 6 inches thick, just layered. And then after he finished, they photographed them top down. So I actually know some of the little kind of secrets. I think the magic item compendium, the runes on the like the front of the book where it's like the spine clasps, I guess they would be, are the initials of him and his wife. So he's like my dad's best friend, and so like that's how I got into playing D&D, is because him and my dad are just like big D&D nerds. So
awesome. Friends in the family in a way. Yep. That's wild. Yeah, it's really cool. You have a personal connection to that.
For sure.
Yeah. I'll have to. I just was looking at some of these images of the old books, and yeah, totally brings me back to that. Yeah. 3.5 is what I played before. I played a little bit of Pathfinder. But yeah, it's cool to hear that you both have kind of background and some experience and knowledge from that. Now, getting back to Wrath and stuff, we talked a little bit about the campaign and some of the tiers.
We left off some of the other
Did we
tiers.
miss a tier? Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's
I'll look the campaign back up.
and those are the rest of those are very Drew specific. So the next one is a sketch. So along with getting a variant copy of Wrath, you're going to get a black and white sketch by Drew. That seems to be our most popular one so far. There's only 2 of them left.
Yeah, we may have to add a couple more of those. I played it on the safe side. I'm like, I don't want to do too many, but if there's the demand, I do not mind adding a few more availabilities, but don't know how many they're going to be. So if you want one, you better get in there quick.
I do have a little funny story about that. One of the attorneys I work with, one of his cases got big enough that they had like a courtroom artist come in. So he had his courtroom sketch in the paper. So he was really excited about that perk. And he's like asking me questions like, how big do you think it is? I'm like, well, it's digital, so you can kind of make it as big as you want.
And like, I draw super big because you can always make things smaller. A lot harder to make things bigger.
That's true. That is
So
true.
he's
Real quick, guys, I do got to head out because I am at work and I'm now done taking my break. So I got to regrettably head out.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks
for
for
joining
coming.
us, man.
It was great talking to you guys.
Later.
See ya.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting. That's an interesting perk right there.
So he was like, "Oh, so we can make little ones? Yeah, as many as you want. It's a digital thing." He's like, "So we can go around and, like stick them on people's cars." About doing one of himself, and I was like, "Dude, we can make stickers." He's like, "Stickers, yeah."
You're blowing his mind, man.
Just don't, if people are gonna call the police, be like, there's vandalism, these stickers are everywhere, don't take them back to me,
Right, yeah.
So Michael, since you told me you work for the opposition now, so if you see a bunch of like stickers on cars in your parking lot,
I'll know who did it.
You know nothing.
Oh, I know nothing. I don't know who did it. Quite the opposite, in fact. That's funny. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I like. I always think sketch stuff is a really fun way for people to get involved with that.
Yeah, and I would definitely, like I said, they're going to be digital, so it's not like we're going to print it out and mail it to you. But of course, I'll make sure the resolution is big enough, though. If you want to print it out, if you want to make it a gift for somebody, you want to print it out, and I don't know if my sketches are worth being framed, but just like whatever you want to do with it. I wanted to make sure it was clear in the reward that's like, I'll draw just about anything you want in terms of like a person, a character, is it your friend, your mom, if it's your own character, if you're another indie comic artist and you want your character drawn, I'm pretty open.
Anything you guys are kind of putting in off the table restricted wise?
Well, there's still more perks.
And in terms of drawing, let's try to keep things, like safe for work.
Right.
What about pets? Because I know you can do it. I know you can do a wicked dog, but
I can do a rage puppy. I would say animals are a little bit of a weaker spot for me, but I'm not gonna. If someone really wants their dog drawn, or their cat, I relate. I have a cat, so like I totally get it. Sometimes you just really need like a photo of your pet.
Right? Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, that's funny. But you said there's another perk though.
There's a full color sketch option. So if you don't want the black and white, you want the full color, Drew can hook you up with that.
Yeah, so I'll do it's like a sketch or like an actual kind of like illustration grade drawing. So if you really want to, I don't know, give someone a gift or something like that, or if you just really want something for yourself, I'll make sure it'll be full colored, shaded. I'll add kind of like a little simple background onto it if you want, or I can make it transparent if you want to make it into a sticker. Up to you.
Jeremy actually backed us at that level, and he said that he will definitely frame that sketch.
Alrighty. Well, thank you.
Well, and I actually had a quick question. You talked about kind of gifts and doing it for yourself. Would you consider maybe if someone, like say someone wanted to have you draw something that they wanted to use for a project that they had in mind, like maybe a cover or a piece of promotional art. Would you be interested in considering something like that potentially? Oops. What the? Sorry.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to keep it kind of just for simplicity's sake, character based. But yeah, if it's something maybe you want some concept art for your project or anything like that, I'm definitely open to that sort of stuff. And
Nice.
you know, not to cheat on Scott or anything, but if I do freelance work, so if anyone's interested in commissioning me sometime or something like that, my commissions are closed at the moment just because I really have been focused on finishing up the stuff for this Kickstarter. But I think probably starting in the next week or so, I'll think about opening those back up again. So I'm open to that if some people are interested, but please back the project before you pay me for anything like that.
Definitely, yeah.
And I am not a jealous creator, so I'm fine with that.
Nice. Well,
and then
cool.
we have another one at the very bottom. This is the highest one. Is Drew will actually put your likeness onto one of the extras in the first chapter of Wrath.
That's awesome. So that's kind of like the fun cameo you can get in there.
For sure. And I wanted to include characters too. Like, so I think it would be kind of fun, if any of the other Wikid artists or Wikid writers, really want one of their characters in the background, like it could be a fun little call to that. So if it's your own character or your own likeness, whatever you want, as long as you own it. I'm not gonna, draw somebody else's character in there just because don't want to run into those sort of
right. Yeah, that's no good.
No Skeletors.
No Skeletors, unfortunately.
That was what I was gonna ask for her. How'd you know? Yeah. But yeah, hear that. Listen, I know there's some Wikid creators listening out there too. So if you guys are hearing that might be something you want to jump on, because that's pretty awesome. I could totally. Now, are there some limits with that as well? Are there things within reason? I would think maybe like is Jack Irons going to be running around in on his cowboy robot horses in the back?
I say we'll try to keep it a little. We'll interpret it.
Okay, yeah.
I think we can have a Jack Irons for sure, but maybe not a robot horse.
Yeah. Yeah.
He might be a little more incognito, like maybe a guy that's in a duster and a hat.
Yeah.
But it's Jack Irons in your heart.
Exactly. Yeah. A modern a Jack Irons for the modern age, you might say. That's cool. I really like those ideas, and I think the tier levels that you have are really priced really reasonably as well. So I think that's something to look at.
I did my homework, looked at some other Kickstarters, and while these might be a little bit higher than what we sell the comics for, is the Kickstarter idea is that you're helping us generate the funds to make this happen, and then we're giving this to you as a gift.
Exactly, and the more that the people can put in who are interested and inspired by the story, the better it can become, and so it's ultimately it's ultimately better for the comic itself. So that's why you see stuff like that. I would think. But yeah, no, I think you guys have a great campaign here right now.
Yeah, we definitely talked it over, and the art tiers are definitely too. I priced them a little bit lower than I typically price my art, just because I specifically was like, I want to generate revenue for the project.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's really generous.
Yeah, and I was actually a little surprised whenever I first, put the idea of doing like commissions out there, and he's like, "Well, do you want to take a cut of that?" And I'm like, "Nah, it's okay." And he's like, "I would feel bad if you didn't take some sort of cut." And I was like, "Are you sure?" I may use whatever I make from that and pour it back into the project. We'll just see.
Nice, yeah, but it's nice to have that option.
Mm-hmm.
Rule number 1: I always pay my artist.
And I appreciate that. There's some people out there who just, you read those funny like clients from hell websites, and you're just like, that people just don't understand what it takes to be an artist or what goes into being an artist.
Oh yeah.
So I always can appreciate when someone, you don't have to be an artist to understand.
No, definitely not. Yeah, coming from a writer's perspective, I totally appreciate what artists do. It's like nothing I could ever do in like a million years. It's incredible. So I totally get that. Yeah.
I did make that joke is when she was what was it, thumbnailing the project to see how many pages and how they were going to lay out. She described the process of, oh, it's just very simple drawings like stick figures. I'm like, oh, so like if I drew the comic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're if you drew it, it would just be like, oh, that's the preview, right? That's just the storyboard. You're like, no, that's it.
No,
Like,
that's it.
yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Not to say if you're a creator out there and you don't have the capability to reach out to an artist, I am an advocate of anybody can learn how to draw, anybody can create that
Right.
sort of stuff. I ain't gonna judge you if you got to start out with stick figures. That's where you got to start out. I didn't start out. I would have 23 now and probably been drawing since I was like 6 or 7. So that's quite a few years of
Yeah.
study and practice. So everyone's got to start somewhere.
No, that's a really great point. Yeah.
Jeremy has a very good question, which I actually have
cool.
myself.
Let me you mind if I'm gonna stop sharing for a second? So I'm gonna jump over
I'll
there.
read it for you. He says,
Okay.
if this was already put out there, ignore it. But Michael, what was it about the project that made you say Wikid has to do this?
Oh, a question for me.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point. Well, so me and Scott had met while I had actually been working with him for a time, and we met. And after I think it was a party or something, maybe, or was it a meeting or introduction?
It was a training meeting because it was a court holiday.
That's right. Yeah. So we had a training, and I had mentioned during the training about Wikid publishing and kind of what I was doing with that, and we afterward he came up to me and we started talking, and he's like, oh, I've had this idea for a while, and I've been really wanting to do something with it, and I wasn't sure, and we just started talking about it, and I think one of the things that really it's like made me want to talk more to Scott about it and start talking about publishing it was the underlying themes of the whole thing about the trauma, but then about it how he overcomes it. I think it was, in fact, I'll tell you specifically what it was, and I hope this isn't spoiling anything, Scott. I don't think it's a spoiler for the story because it's really just the inspiration what you told me. But you were telling me about this video that you had watched as part of the training. I think we watched it at that interview, at that meeting.
That's right. I forgot about that.
It was a video about, I believe, you might be able to say better. Was it
The lollipop moments?
Yeah. That's right. And can you explain what that means for those who might not know what that means?
So it's about random acts of kindness, about how you just little things that you just do for people without thinking about like the impact they have can lead to just amazing things and can the speaker, it was a TED talk, he talks about how he worked at a college and there's all these people going in for lines, and there was this girl and he was handing out lollipops, and he was gonna hand one to this girl but then stopped and then handed it to the guy next to her and said, you need to give this young lady a lollipop. And what he didn't know is that she was really intimidated by the whole process, was thinking about quitting, and just this whole hilarious thing that was playing out in front of her just kind of made her at ease, and that she could do this and that everyone around her was in the same thing. And the funny thing is she went and found this guy later and told him about this, and he didn't even remember doing it. And she's like, that guy you gave that lollipop to and introduced me to, we're getting married this summer. We would like you to be there. So there is going to be some underlying things where these random acts of kindness culminate into something that's going to happen later.
Yeah, and then I think it was when we talked about that, and that struck a chord with me because it was something that I had been thinking about at the time, and about the idea of the importance of even helping a single person. And so when you told me that, I thought that there was something that really resonated with me, and I was struck by how even though it was a fictional story with some fantastical elements, it had a real underlying theme and message it wanted to bring across that I thought was really powerful. So I think that's what really drew me to first want to talk to Scott about that comic. Yeah.
And Matt also gave his thing, and he's been very enthusiastic about this from the beginning. And he shared a little bit of that story earlier, and I'm like, oh, that's why he's been so on board with this. So I'm glad that resonated with him.
Yeah, he says for those who didn't see it, he says Matt says in the chat. I know for me, Jeremy, it's the setup and how unique using a creature while unconscious grabbed that also hit home with trauma because of his fiance, but even on how down to earth it was with the setting. So yeah, that's cool to hear that.
Yeah, he was talking earlier about how he was kind of like going down this dark path, and then meeting his fiance kind of pulled him, to the brighter, like lighter path.
I see. Yeah. That's interesting, and I think that's what's going to make your story connect with so many people. Is that idea itself?
Now we just gotta let them know about it. That's what we're working on right now.
Exactly right. But sorry, go ahead.
It is interesting because you brought up that little thing that I'm incorporating in the story, because that's kind of how we're using this to get the funding. Is we're asking people for little acts of kindness to make this big thing happen.
No, that's so true. Yeah, and that's what is so cool about crowdfunding is it is those little bit of everyone helping and pushing it forward that creates this project and makes it come to life. I think why people love these crowdfunding campaigns. So yeah, I'm super excited to see what you guys do with this story. It's super. It sounds like it gets dark at times, but it also sounds like it gets pretty bright at times too. So it sounds like there's a good balance and a lot of interesting stuff for people to dive into.
I hope to get some chuckles like in some of the issues. So there's going to be some dark stuff, and there's hopefully some humor, some smiles, some chuckles.
That's always good. You need those moments to lighten up some of the darker moments.
Gotta have that comic relief.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very important. Speaking of comic relief and going to a little bit more of a lighter question, I wanted to ask you guys if Wrath were to ever be made into a movie or a TV series, who would you see starring as Doug and as Nicole?
So I haven't really come up with someone for Nicole, but I was thinking, like, when I was writing this, because they were filming 13 Reasons Why, like not too far from where I work, is the main guy for that, because he just seems just like an ordinary guy that gets kind of thrown into some like heavy stuff.
That's interesting. Yeah. But no one for Nicole, huh?
I haven't really thought too much about that.
Sorry, can you go over the one you said for Doug again?
So let me see if I can find his name. But yeah, there's that Netflix show 13 Reasons Why.
I know we talked about that earlier. I need to check that one out. Have you seen that show, Drew, by any chance?
I have not. I know of it, but I haven't watched it.
Do you watch much TV these days, or?
I don't actually watch a lot of TV. I will go on binges where I'm just like, all right, I've been meaning to catch up on this show, so here we go.
All right, his name is Dylan Minnette.
Dylan Minnette. Oh yeah, here he is. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to show that to everyone so we can?
Sure. Yeah. Specifically in that movie.
Just
or the actor in general.
Just a actor in general, just so you can kind of see the comparison on what I'm thinking here. But yeah, so there you go. If you can see that there.
So I feel like I've seen him in something.
He's been in some other shows, I think, like as some more minor characters. I think the 13 Reasons Why was his first major role, but I think he's been in some other TV stuff.
Looks like he's been acting since a young age. Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks pretty average. I think that's a good Doug.
Yeah, I totally can see what you mean about seeing Doug in him. That's actually an interesting question. Did you guys talk about how the characters would look together, or how did the inspiration for their specific looks come about?
I would say I actually asked Scott about that. He described the characters, but there wasn't a whole lot that he had described visually. And I remember him saying it's like he had just envisioned these characters in his head for so long that he just sort of forgot that he had to describe them to me. Um, but he sort of walked me through, you know, the basics, like, oh, Doug's got, darker hair and just kind of like an average guy. And then Nicole's this kind of she gave me very, like, the way he described her is just kind of like headstrong, confident, young Latina girl. And I just had these kind of ideas, so I sketched them out and sent them over to Scott, and then he kind of says, "Oh, I like these. Let's try giving Nicole some curlier hair." Or I think I originally drew Doug with glasses because it's just like describe this like nerdy kid to me, and my brain just immediately is like, nerds got to wear glasses. All my friends are nerds and they all wear glasses. So but he was like, well, let's keep it a little simpler than that. Let's not do glasses at all. So I passed some sketches and some feedback back and forth until we settled on kind of the final designs.
That's cool. Yeah.
That is a lot of the process. Is I'll give her like a rough estimate, and then she'll draw it or get halfway through and then show it to me, and then I'm like, oh, and then this, and then this, and then this.
Kind of snowballed after that, huh?
Like, one of the things we're working on is she was kind of stuck on something, and then she showed me that, and I'm like, do this for this reason, and this reason.
Which, of course, we can't get into the details of,
right?
Spoilers.
Spoilers. But it is kind of a process where, like, her work will remind me of motivations for the characters that I can feed back to her, so she can accurately portray them.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible. And for you, again, being your first project, Scott, how has that been for you to see that all the ideas in your mind come to life?
Oh, it's awesome. Like every time she sends me something, it just like immediately cheers me up or just like sets the mood for the day. I'm like, yes.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I even did a little GIF one time. I think Jeremy liked it. It was the Futurama when he's like, "Oh no, fantastic!" And I compared it to like starting the day and then like getting a new piece of artwork.
Wow, yeah, that's really exciting. I'm really glad to hear you guys are both enjoying the project, from what it sounds like. Yeah.
It is it perplexes me sometimes because like lots of times I always self-doubt and like, no, I don't want to do this, but like this project has just been like driving me forward.
In what aspects of your life have you found that it helps in other aspects as well?
Well, I mean, it's just like I can't let it go. Like I'm always like, even on the days where I'm just like, oh, what am I doing? Is this really gonna, like those self-doubt dates that like every artist deals with is like, I just keep putting one foot in front of the other and getting here. So actually I wanted to thank you guys and Matt, if he's still listening, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the three of you helping me, fill in the gaps that I can't do.
Oh,
so
definitely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
Wanted to thank the Wikid family for all their support and encouragement, and our small and growing fan base.
That's excellent to hear. Yeah, it's been great to have you part of the Wikid team with us, and I'm really glad to hear that you have been fitting in and really appreciating it. And
I did have a moment like after I got thrown into the chat group and like, like Cody's over there like, yeah, I got all this going on, and like, the Mythoverse has like got all their stuff, and I'm just like, how the hell did I get here?
That's funny. Yeah, it's we definitely have creators of all types, and I have to say again, that was a great Cody impression. That was hilarious. Spot on, almost, I would say.
Oh, I love his enthusiasm. That guy's
yes.
Yeah, he's inspiring. I think he's kind of like the cheerleader for the Wikid team.
I could totally see that. Yeah, him and maybe Brett, right? But yeah, no, they're all good people, and it was. I'm glad that I was able to meet you when I did because I was only there for a short time, so it was nice that we were able to meet when we did.
Yeah, it was great too because then I didn't have to deal with like pitching something and having to deal with getting rejected. So that.
Right, Cody could tell you all about that as well. Now you guys mentioned earlier that you guys are both comic fans. Can you tell me some of your favorite comics?
Oh, I'm a huge Batman fan. Like
Really?
a huge Batman fan. But I also enjoy manga.
Yeah.
I've almost read all of Bleach. I
Wow,
have
congrats.
Right.
I have the
I'm
last
impressed.
copy. Well, see, here's the trick I learned is that my local library has all the copies, and they have this system where you can just reserve them, and they can be sent to like the library right across the street from work. So it's very convenient for me.
Yeah, I see. That's smart. Yeah, I was doing that for a while, getting manga from the library. You'd be
But
surprised how much manga's at a library. It's kind of insane.
yeah, but I actually bought the last issue. I haven't read it yet. I'm saving it. If we get this
What?
if we get this funded, I'm gonna
Oh
crack that.
wow.
I'm gonna crack that open. I'm not a drinker, so there's no
Uh,
champagne. For me, it's gonna be the last issue of Bleach.
that's your champagne.
That's my champagne.
The champagne of manga is Bleach.
For me, it is.
Hey man, if you've read that far, you've earned that one. So, I used to watch that anime of that one. I liked that one for a while.
I remember being really into Bleach when I first got into anime in like
Yeah.
middle school. That was like
Totally.
one of the only series that my school library had like a consistent amount of issues of. Like we had like 3 issues of One Piece, and a few issues of Naruto, but Bleach was the one they actually like. I guess somebody must have like donated like the first like 20 issues or something like that. So I remember just like sitting down and like, oh yeah, I'm gonna read Bleach. I haven't read it in a while, but maybe I should pick it back up.
Yeah, they finally finished the series.
The manga is better than the show because the show kind of gets bogged down with like filler episodes and stuff, so it's kind of hard to figure out like what's canon and what's just this other stuff. But the manga is pretty consistent.
Like the Bound arc. You remember that one?
Which one was that one again?
They made these like fake people. They were like doll or like homunculi almost. And they had.
Oh, I think I remember. Yeah, that's
It
all
was,
in
it was really
anime.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was after he lost his powers too, I think,
I
right?
think so. Yeah, I believe it
Yeah.
was. It was after the Soul Society arc, the first one, I think. Like right after it, potentially, maybe even. But anyway, we're getting off on a Bleach tangent. But Drew, what about you? What are some comics that you really like?
So I've never been like a big like I guess I wouldn't want to call them like serialized comics like Batman and all that. Like I didn't really have access to that when I was younger. I like I said I'd read manga and stuff from like the school library, but I found myself at least in the past few years getting really into like webcomics. Just because a lot of them are like indie creators, and I just really love seeing all the like cool stories that people make. I think my favorite is this comic called Paranatural, and it is one of the funniest, I think, comics that I've ever read. The artist just has a way of drawing facial expressions that I can't even imagine how they get that into their brain, like how what strikes them to create these wacky things. And it's also like an inspiration too, because if you go online and read it, it starts out kind of rough. It's clearly this was an idea that the creator had, and it's like I'm just gonna get it out there, I'm just gonna start it. And then looking at the the first page versus like the later pages, just the way it goes, from black and white to color, the character designs get a lot more succinct. But it's honestly just like such a neat comic. It's called Paranatural because it's about it's the combination of supernatural and paranormal. So it's about spirits and ghosts and these middle school kids that some of them are able to see spirits and ghosts and some of them aren't, and sort of the wacky misadventures that this group of kids gets into. So I've been reading it probably it's been updating. I think it's down to one update a week because the artist has some wrist issues, and if he draws too much, then
yeah, that's always the problem.
it's-
That's always the problem artist face, isn't it?
yeah,
You always the risks.
it's like, oh, carpal tunnel coming back up again.
Oh my God.
But it's just I absolutely adore this like story and world, and like
Really? Wow.
God, right underneath the image you have, like that's one of those good facial expression panels. It's just like
That's awesome. Oh my God. Yeah, you're kidding. The faces are
like
pretty.
I honestly, oh goodness, up above this too, on the same line a little bit farther down, just
Oh, let's see. Up above it, you said?
it's in the same line as the image you're on.
Let's
I
see.
think you'll notice it. It's at the top of the screen right now.
Is it this one?
Yes, it is, or the one next to it.
One?
It's just it's
Uh,
like insane. Oh, the one on the right. Sorry,
oh, oops. One more over.
one more over. Sorry.
Oh, I see it now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's
His
just
mouth is just like it's almost like the chattering teeth toy from back in the day.
so yeah.
That was awesome. I love this, like you said, his facial expressions, and it does seem like it's a very colorful, expressive work.
Yeah.
I could totally see why you'd be inspired by that.
It's just such a neat comic too, and so this is one of the ones that like I said I've been keeping up with a while. Another comic I really like is called Ava's Demon. It's drawn not in a traditional comic format. It's actually like multiple panels, almost like a like the one of the pages is on the second one on the second row. That's what the pages look like.
Like this one here.
Yeah, so they're like single panels, and the way that so the artist for this, she used to be an artist for DreamWorks, and she said that her goal with the comic is whenever you look at it like super far away, it'll look like a color script for a film.
Oh.
So it's got these just kind of really high illustration, beautiful renderings. Right now, and at the end of every chapter or every big plot, there's these animations that she does.
Was that what we were just looking at by any chance?
Yeah, so that's one of the smaller ones, but she'll do actually like full animations. But it's
Really?
it's this kind of space opera, you know, with these. It's got some fantasy elements to it, but it's all about aliens and you know this crazy stuff in space. So it's like this character is Nevi. She's based off of like kind of this fish race of people. So she's got all these different outfits based off of like different types of fish.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
this one just beautiful to look at. Like the story is also fantastic, but just something about like you can tell how much passion the artist puts into the works. So
Yeah, that's really cool. It is very detailed, and I think the animation stuff is pretty cool too. It seems, and yeah, that's awesome. So are you really into like a really colorful kind of artwork then?
yeah, which is kind of ironic because whenever I draw, I tend to keep my stuff a little bit more like neutrals, you know, desaturated colors,
Oh, really?
stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to it's like the stuff that I like. I think the reason I like these comics so much, though, is just like the passion of the person creating them. It comes so clearly in the work and stuff like that. And also, like I said, seeing, you know, the way the comic looks when the person starts and the way the comic looks, you know, after they've been working on it for a few years. It's just so cool to see the growth in the story, growth in the art, you know.
Wow.
It's just very interesting, and I really enjoy that.
That's cool. Yeah, that's something that's unique to the web comics, like you were saying. That
Yeah.
you see that growth.
And it's also, I think, the fun thing that I really enjoy about webcomics is like it makes them very accessible for people. You know, a lot of these are free. You know, it's just an artist or a writer or artist duo sitting down and saying, you know, I've got this story in my head and I'm gonna put it out there for everybody to see. And you know, some of these only update, you know, once a week, once every 2 weeks, but it's really cool to see, you know, also the different ways people do comics. You know, like this one isn't in the traditional format, so it's almost like each page is its own little mini illustration.
And that's really cool. And you get to see that kind of stuff in the indie sphere a lot. I think with people innovating and doing different things like that. Well, that's cool. It sounds like you guys have some really like diverse interests in comics. So we're getting down to the end of our time here. We got a few more questions to go. I wanted to ask you guys, you know, as you guys are going through with your first campaign here, what can you guys tell us about the future of Wrath?
I don't know. You want to take that, Scott? Like I'm kind of sitting here thinking.
Right? Scott.
So, sorry, I had my mic on mute there.
No
So what you're going to see is this is the origin story. I've already kind of explained a little bit about 2. There is going to be some opposition. I hinted at that earlier, where you're going to see some people with similar powers and what they're up to. And Doug and Nicole are collectively going to have to come to a decision of whether or not they're going to get involved with that.
And
And
what will come into that decision?
So then that would what would come into that is so he's raised by 2 people that work in, you know, criminal justice law. So, you know, his upbringing is, you know, you don't take it into your own hands.
Don't be a vigilante, you know.
Yeah.
But what happens? What happens when you have the power?
No Batman. You know, like, and his discovering the power is ultimately going to be like him just controlling it because he doesn't want to hurt people or you know, heaven forbid, kill someone. So he comes to this decision that because his stepdad, the person who raised him, is going to be in the direct path of whoever's doing this, that is ultimately what's going to push him to try and stop this.
And could you say then that this manifestation that's kind of coming out of him, it's because the comic title is Wrath, so is it almost like that manifestation of that uncontrollable wrath that, you know, is kind of in all people in a way?
In a way, that is the recurring theme, is that we all bundle this, we all carry it with us. He just has, for whatever reason, the ability to bring it out.
Right.
And some other people figure out that they can bring it out, and we're gonna have a clash there.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and this sort of idea of, you know, these people who have the ability to manifest this, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to do something destructive? Are they going to do something constructive? So, you know, and so that's another fun kind of thing to look forward to.
Yeah, that's another nice theme that's in addition to the stuff we talked about earlier, is that idea of you know, having this power and how do you use it. I think that's really kind of a compelling idea. So yeah,
it's kind of a hero story, but not the you know, like Cape and Types type of hero story.
Now I also love the I love your stuff about him being raised by, you know, family of criminal justice, since, you know, you work in the field and I do as well, and having us both have that interest, I think that's a really cool thing to add in there, that I'm totally looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, and a lot of that is gonna be push, you know, like what's driven and push Doug to do the right thing too.
Yeah, and hopefully he will do the right thing. We shall see.
That's what we'll see.
when you have a rage puppy on your back, it's kind of hard to do the right thing sometimes. So I wanted to ask you guys, even though it is earlier in your campaign, are there any triumphs and challenges that you've faced so far?
I've gotten some good feedback. You know, I've been doing Twitter, and some Facebook and some word of mouth, and I think a lot of the backers we have are not just a Wikid family, but also some word of mouth people, and I think both of us have some people that are interested and will eventually join in as well.
Oh, for sure. I've been a bit busy these past couple days, but once that kind of cools down a little bit, I'm gonna be calling up my family, telling my dad, like people who like comics, tell people about this,
Right?
and
I mean, your family seems like the perfect people to get in touch about that. Since
oh, for sure, yeah, no, they're like, let us know when it launches. And I'm like, I told you it launches on the 3rd, like
Awesome.
I'll share it on my social media, you'll know.
It is funny, like in our brains, it's like burned in there, and everyone else is like, "Oh, that's today," and it's like,
Yeah,
"Yes."
seriously, yeah. That's funny, yeah. And I'm totally not used to that myself, because my family, I don't have, like, I'm like the only nerd in my family, so I'm like I'm like, who do I call? So
we
that's
got a fun split. Like, we're all kind of nerds, but like my dad and I are the more like stereotypical like D&D, fantasy sci-fi nerds, where my sister and my mom are a little bit different. So
nice.
it's kind of, you got a nice
Good balance there.
yeah, balance.
That's really funny. So is there any advice that you guys can give to new comic creators out there looking to either write or draw their first comic?
My as like the writer part is don't kick yourself. It's pretty simple when you get down to it. It's just getting yourself motivated to do it. Like look up some guides, some from pro creators showing you the step by step, and if you've got that idea, just get out there and start getting your hustle on, get it going, talk to people, put it out there.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I'd have to agree. From the art side, like, even as someone who does art, for both for fun and job, like motivation and that sort of feeling of like, oh, I should wait till I'm ready, is such a killer of creativity. Like, I don't know how many times that I've kind of like caught myself like having an idea for something, for an illustration, for a character design, and being like, well, I don't know if I can pull that off the way exactly like I want it to, and then like that holding me back from getting started. So like my advice, don't be intimidated by the people who are better than you, because there's always going to be someone who's a better artist, who's a better writer, but that doesn't invalidate your ideas and what you can do. So like try not to let that stop you in your tracks or get you frozen up. And like I said, like with those webcomics, it's like, look at where these people started, and look at if you don't think your art is very good now, just takes a few years of practice, just no sense in not starting now, because if you don't start now, if you start 2 years later, it's still just going to be the same thing. It's just 2 years later. So get started.
Part of what I'm looking forward to is, if we get this project going, is comparing Drew's art from the beginning to what it's going to look like at the end.
Oh, me too. I'm terrified of that, but I'm also very excited. Like I'm gonna look back on that first page I did and be like, oh, I have to redo it. Like this, like, oh, we can't put that out there.
That's funny, yeah.
But
I wonder if you'll feel the same way about your writing, Scott.
probably. I am my worst critic. But one other thing I want to add to the art thing is get your artwork out there. Like, even if you're just starting out, because how I found Drew's work was they have these fantastic threads on Twitter where they asked artists to post their stuff, and I would just scroll through those and just follow people whose artwork caught my eye.
Yeah, that's incredible, the power of social media and just putting yourself out there. You'll be surprised what kind of avenues you can find to doing that. And
Yeah.
I
So
think
you might just get a weird DM from someone you don't know asking you to do.
And now look at where you've become, you're at.
For sure.
All from that one weird DM. But I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. But I wanted to see if you guys would, if there's anything you'd like to say to all those looking forward to you guys' comic wrap.
Just give us the support we need, and we've got a great story with some great twists and turns, and we hope that you thoroughly enjoy it, and we just want to get it out there for you.
That's great.
Yeah, I would say, we really do appreciate like any support, even if you're in a situation where you don't really have any money to support us. Sharing the Kickstarter on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever social media you use. If you don't have social media, email it to a friend who might seem interested. We do the fact of getting it out there and sharing it with other people is just as impactful as the money that you can support us with. So don't feel bad if you don't have that money. I've been there. So
I have too. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, there's many ways to support us, and just even word of mouth, or just, hey, my buddy would really like this. Show it to him. Like just get it out there for people to see.
Someone with a birthday in like February of March of next year and who likes comics,
Start planning ahead, right?
Exactly.
Your
What is
birthday
it like?
right
$15-$20 now. If you got it now, then you don't have to worry about buying them a gift later.
Exactly. It's in the bill. It's in the bank.
Yeah.
It's ready to go. No, that's a great. Yeah, I think people are going to really be excited about your book. I think it's got, not only does it have incredible writing and art, but I just think that you guys have a really important story that I think a lot of people will connect with and really feel is special to them. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys reach your goal and breaking past it, and even getting some more for down the line for future arcs and stories. So everyone, please check out their work online. I posted the link to their Kickstarter in the YouTube chat. And where can people follow you online so they can check out more of what you got going on?
So the Wrath Twitter is my Twitter. It's @KyshKuman. And we also now have an Instagram account, which is Wrath Graphic Novel. And we do have some stuff that we're holding in reserves that we can reveal those to you guys later and kind of build some momentum for that. So keep an eye on those accounts, because we're going to be posting that stuff there as well as the Kickstarter page.
Yeah, the Kickstarter has launched, but we are not done showing you some cool stuff we've got in store. Just, put some finishing touches on some stuff, got some stuff that we're planning to tease, as the project, goes on. So by far, what's on the Kickstarter is not all we have to say. We've got some fun tricks up our sleeves.
Nice. That's exciting.
I will say it's some very cool stuff.
Really? Ooh.
Yes.
Now you got me curious. I want to know.
So you might get an inside track, but everyone else has to wait.
Hey, sorry guys. I'm getting this special scoop, not you. But that's cool. And I'm sorry, I can't find the. Would you mind sending me the Instagram link in the chat so I can post that?
Let me see if I can find that.
And then Drew, did you happen to say where people can follow you online?
I'm primarily on Twitter nowadays, which it's just Twitter is @Drewzelle with an underscore at the end, because @Drewzelle is taken by a dead account. So I've tried getting in contact with Twitter to see if they can release the username, but so far no luck. So the account hasn't been active, I think, since like 2015. I'm like, please.
Oh
so, yeah.
man, that's brutal. It's too bad Twitter can't help you out with that.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Oh well, but
Right?
but yeah, so it's just @Drewzelle underscore on Twitter. I try to be fairly active there, posting my original stuff, posting stuff for the comic, a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
That's
with the Kickstarter, I am always there. It seems like.
Let's see. Sorry, yeah, I didn't get the. Do you have the Instagram I can put up real quick?
It's in the chat.
Oh, it is. Sorry, 1 second. Which chat? Oh well.
The YouTube one, so you don't even have to do it. I already did.
Oh, you already put it in for me? Oh,
Yeah.
look at you! You already got me covered, man.
I'm proactive.
Awesome. Well, I think that about covers it then. I really appreciate you guys coming on talking with Matt and I today about your project.
Oh no, thanks for having us.
Oh, definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
It was actually a lot of fun.
I'm glad. I'm glad I got to talk with you again, Scott, and I'm glad we finally got to meet Drew. It was great meeting you.
Nice to meet you guys as well.
And we have another. We might be able, if you guys are interested, we have another series that we do called Campaign Countdown, where we go over kind of like leading up to the end of the campaign, kind of just celebrating where you guys are at and putting it out there some more. So if you guys are interested, we'd be very happy to have you on again, both of you on as well. So definitely we'll talk more about that. But thanks again, guys, and I appreciate everyone in the chat for watching.
Yeah,
and
thanks for coming out.
We'll see you guys next time, and everyone have a great night.
Thanks. Y'all have